in the past, research was always sort of an ivory tower thing. It was not kept in the marketing area so much. It was used by that, but the key thing was to protect the identity of the people we were talking to. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that was always a trust issue that researchers have fought hard to maintain as far as our ability to communicate and recruit people to do legitimate research studies.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to your favorite CX show, the Engati CX show. I'm your host, Rahul, and today we have an expert on CX and market research on the show. But before I introduce you to our special guest, allow me to introduce you to the magic of Engati. Engati is the world's leading multilingual no-code chatbot platform available across 14 channels, with 35,000 bots created across 186 countries in every domain and use case. Engati has also been recognized as the top platform by Inc.com, TechWorld, CIO, and many others. We run the Engati blog, the video channel, and the Engati CX podcast that you guys absolutely love, receiving upwards of 400,000 visitors annually. And now for our special guest, none other than Mark Michelson, and he is the CEO and producer of CX Talks. CX Talks produces online and local in-person events to connect and educate the customer experience community. His mission is to help people understand each other by creating meaningful and memorable customer experiences. With a background in market research, he founded Threads Qualitative Research, a consultancy that weaves insights from qualitative and quantitative research to design and improve customer experiences. So welcome to the show, Mark. Such an honor to have you on board.
Pleased to be here.
All right. So before we jump into the interview, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel because we put out so many contents. Amazing thought leaders like Mark come on the show and shed light over things like CX, artificial intelligence, machine learning. So it's a lot of great content coming through. So make sure you don't miss out on that and hit the subscribe button. So jumping onto the first question, Mark, and you have had an extensive background in market research, right? So how has your background in something like market research shaped your interest in customer experience?
It's a great question. I started my first market research firm when I was 22 years old in 1984. Right. And at the time, I was more interested in things like the qualitative aspects, you might say, doing focus groups and such. So one of my first clients I had was a store design and retail design firm. Okay, so when I started working with this client, we were doing a lot of things had to do with developing big stores and small stores, but the way that these stores were designed, it would change the actual interaction and the experience. For instance, we were working on 3 different major car brands at the time, and I could tell you who they are: the Acura, Infiniti, and Saturn. And so the car buying experience at the time globally was the building was designed to sell cars, not to help people buy cars. Right. Even getting your car repaired was a nasty thing that happened in the back, instead of in the front. So we actually changed the design of the building to facilitate a buying experience intentionally, changing the seating arrangement, the way the offices were designated, the whole car delivery process, the test drive, and brought service around to the front. So that was one of my first things I did, and it was a global basis. Just by wandering around, talking to people, lots of focus groups, lots of ethnography and things like that. So we didn't call it customer experience at the time in the 80s, but as time went by, I started doing more and more experiential type work, including mystery shopping, which was evaluating services. And that became such a big part of our business that I actually went on to create the Mystery Shopping Providers Association, now known as Mystery Shopping Professionals Association. So those 2 things, mystery shopping on a major basis in the early 90s, we were doing 5,000 shops a month, which was pretty good size. A lot of focus groups around everything from product design to more and more store and facility development. And then when websites started coming around later in the 90s, we did a lot of work with IBM and other companies in setting up these websites and understanding that user experience. it really wasn't until probably the past 10, 15 years that the idea of customer experience became an actual discipline with some thought out principles and guiding guidelines, if you will, and it's all encompassing. So I started getting engaged with that. Had actually created a small group of people who did customer experience. At the time, I called it the IDEA, the International Design Experience Association. And I only had so much bandwidth at the time. Another friend of mine and I had started that, named Mike Wittenstein. After we ran that and had a couple of hundred members or whatever, it was just a way for us to communicate about what we did because it was unique. Um, After that, then CXPA formed, and I got very involved in running the chapter here in Atlanta, and the rest is history.
Right, and it's absolutely amazing that you were thinking about design and how it affects customer psychology and the way things work out. During that time, I mean that, and now the world is actually taking these things seriously and moving towards experience. So that's fantastic and amazing.
There's a
Uh,
great quote on that. It
uh,
was by Winston Churchill, and
mhm,
he said, "We shape our houses, then they shape us."
absolutely.
And so when you think about stores and or anything, it could be omni-channel. I mean, if it's not well thought through, it's probably not going to deliver a great experience.
Right. Right. That right there is an Engati gem. That's what we call, ladies and gentlemen, when you drop, you have a mic drop. That's what you just did there on the first question itself. So thank you so much for that. Talking about more in getting into this mindset, right? So it is a little difficult to a lot of businesses who are starting out. So how should really businesses go about conducting a research study for creating and then measuring customer experiences? And can you really elaborate on concepts like VOC and competitive positioning?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm getting ready to give a talk on this. I gave a talk earlier on Quirks
Right.
Media, which is a market research publication. And so the world of customer experience research roughly can be broken down into three areas. Okay. There is the design phase or the innovation side, the front end work of understanding what people do, what they need, and what's missing. Okay, how can we help them with their life somehow? And that kind of research is typically qualitative in nature. It's just understanding what people are doing. It can be observational, it's very behavioral oriented, and you also get into the emotional states of what they're doing. That the findings from that kind of work, both internal with customers and dealing with their own employees, management, and the buying or shopper, if you will, as well as the consumer. So the shopper and consumer could be different. So you try to look at that whole process, and then you can have some data to put in to create a journey map, because you do have different points of view from management, from frontline workers, from employees, from a shopper and a consumer. And so that's the front end type work. It's very soft data, it's emotional, it's observational, it's behavioral. And then design around that. The next phase of research would be iterative continuous improvement. So whatever you have is great, but it can probably be improved just through observation. Again, and through dealing with mass data. So you deal with big data, you can start to observe consumers and what they do or don't do, both electronically as well as in store. So you can look at purchases and combine purchase data with X data, or well, what the perceptual data is, and then you start to have a structure to improve continuously, identifying those areas that need improvement, and then have a focused study around that. And that focused study could be anything from just in-depth interviews, Zoom interviews. Focus groups are easy. I've been doing focus groups online for about 15 years, but now it's everyone's joined in with Zoom and so forth. But just have some structured interviews around it, right? And then you inform the design team, you go back and forth with iterative design. The third phase, and this is the final one and probably the most abused in all of the methods, and that is VOC metrics. So the metrics of everything from CSAT scores to NPS scores to customer effort scores. Those types of scores are typically done after the fact, so you're looking backwards anyhow. And how did we do? And would you tell your friends? And blah blah blah. Okay, I have issues with each one of these, and without understanding why they gave the score, it's pretty meaningless. But when you're dealing with an organization that has, multi-unit, a 5,000 unit, chain, you really can't dig down, to why, understanding why and everything, but at least getting a clue towards it, and then using some AI tools to sort of dig up what is the sentiment going on. All right. So you can say if we're getting a low, customer effort scores, what's going on? You can actually look at the timeline and see how long it took and how easy it was to do business. You can remove those roadblocks. But with NPS, it's not even applicable to B2B, number one. I mean, how often are you going to go, you have to talk to so many people in the company to see who they recommend, because you're dealing with an entity that has a lot of people. If you're dealing with consumers, it's applicable sometimes, but I get the question all the time at a grocery store I go to all the time. How likely would I be to recommend this grocery store to my friends or, relatives? Not very likely. I mean, really, in a course of conversation on a daily basis, I'm not likely to recommend a grocery store. I might recommend a movie or a restaurant or something, but just, you know, they're not going to get me in the high promoters area. And they can ask why all day, and I'll say, I just don't recommend them grocery stores in the course of my daily living. So again, those metrics are important for scores so that at least you get a one reading. It's like a temperature check, but you're not really dealing with the whole patient. You might do a temperature check, but you're missing out on the fact that he's dehydrated or that they've got a wound. There's certain things you're just not going to get with a temperature check.
Absolutely, I totally agree to that. Well, talking about something interesting now. This one term called mobile ethnography, right? So,
Yeah.
how can startups really use research techniques like these to deliver personalized experiences to customers?
Okay. So I also created the Mobile Market Research Association
Mhm.
back when smartphones were invented. And we came up with all kinds of guidelines for proper use and best practices and gave lots of workshops on it. I'm a big fan of mobile ethnography, but with a caveat, especially for a startup, it's easy to get lots of people out there to come and share their life with you through video, through phone, through filling out forms, etc. All right, it's all easy to do. It's so easy you can become inundated and flooded with nothing but videos and photos and
Mm.
moments and blah blah blah. So I did a study, for instance, last year with 120 participants over a 6-month period. That's a community that I engaged to do part bulletin board and part diary keeping, which is really mobile ethnography. I mean, all you're doing is you're just keeping your diary on your phone and adding photos and videos. Okay. And so we would want this in case they were looking for tires. So every time they thought about tires or did something regarding tires, we want to record what they did, whether it was talking with someone. They didn't have to record the conversation, but they have to say, I had a conversation and this is how it influenced me. And then we'd have an influence level and we'd understand what brands are you considering now versus last week. You've
Right.
gotten further down the road. It's a lot of data from 120 people. And then we had to further, distill it down into type of vehicle and age of vehicle and, type of participant, et cetera. So my advice is make it simple. Don't try to swallow the ocean.
Mm.
You don't, with ethnography to begin with, you're just trying to understand the if you will the anthropology of a situation. Okay, what are the artifacts that are being used, how are they being used, what tools are at their disposal, what kind of social organizations going on that contribute to a major purchase, right? For smaller day-to-day purchases, it's not as important to go into, but for considered purchases, you want to understand how the emotions, the brand, the play, the experience all come together to give you confidence to make that decision. Tires are, whatever they are, $1,000 or something.
Right.
You want to make sure that's a considered decision. So it's kind of a slow thinking process anyhow versus fast in behavioral economics. So the advice is find a few people, get them to participate, or go to an existing panel. There's a lot of companies out there that have mobile, and I'm friends with a lot of them. I could name a few. Field Agent does a great job. It's all self-serve. You can put in your location, and boom, they'll go. Same with M4. I think they have a good platform as well. There's a couple of them out there. Vox Pop Me, for instance. If you want feedback from people on their phones, sometimes you could just get one or two answers real quickly. Did you go to the store? Is the sign there? Did you find what you want? And so when they leave the store, they can say, this is what I experienced. I expected this and this happened, and it made me feel this way. All right.
Right.
Only 10 or 15 of those is fine. You don't need 150 or
True.
200 or 1,000.
True. That's true.
You can't make sense of it after a while. And even with AI tools, it becomes difficult.
Yeah, I mean, but it's like more like a time-consuming process. I mean, you need to have that kind of data as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a famous image out there in design thinking. Okay, so you've got a field, right, and it's like a campus, right? Let's call it a campus, and they have the paved route going this way, and then there's a shortcut over here that goes this way. That's more used, right?
Right.
Well, the design team probably thought, the building, they go up here around this way, and then they can cross, whatever. But everyone else said, no, screw that, I'm going this way, right?
Right.
That's the kind of stuff you'll learn with mobile ethnography, because you're observing what they do, and maybe they'll tell you why.
Right. I think this is one place wherein all your preconceived notions can be broken, your bubbles can be broken.
Yeah, I mean, what people buy products for is often not what it was intended. Just little things you don't really pay attention to in a way that says, is this a real thing or is this person just crazy?
True. Absolutely true. Well, moving on to my next question that I have for you is, and you've been in the game for a long time now, and you've seen a lot of changes, with technology and stuff. So do you really think that the way we conduct market research to understand customers has changed over time with the emergence of AI and machine learning too?
Oh gosh. Yeah, from a researcher's side, yeah, there's some tools out there that certainly make things like text analytics a lot easier. If I'm dealing with 5,000 surveys, and I've inherited some products, some studies where I had to do the analytics on it on a qual basis, and this client had at least 5,000 responses to a probably 40 question survey, and there was at least 20 open ends, and the open ends were real open. I mean, it was like paragraphs, and they could have addressed a number of things in each response, and there's 5,000 of them. And then I had to segment it out by type of customer, et cetera, right? It was a nightmare of coding. You could have spent forever on this thing.
Right.
And I needed to create I needed to organically create buckets, from, what do they call that? Anyhow, there's a term in research. So a latent class. Okay, so latent class, it forms naturally, right? The whatever classifications versus me coming in saying, these are the biotypes, right? You have to let that form out naturally from those comments. That kind of stuff is really, and frankly, latent class segmentation would be impossible without the current technology.
Right.
If you've ever done any deep dive into that kind of stuff, latent class stuff, dealing with stuff like conjoint and or max diff, you really couldn't. Before we had cards, and you'd come into a facility and you'd have to choose this one. It's like an eye test: choose this one or that one. And then now it has these features. Which one? Is that kind of thing. Now it's all handled online, much easier and smoother with cards. You can flip through a lot easier to make your choices. It's almost like Tinder of choice, right? and those kind of fast thinking, fast moving things are interesting. And gosh, this kind of stuff here where you can have face to face and one on one. I've done studies where I have multiple cameras at the participant site because I needed to look at, for instance, their use of VR
Right.
systems they purchased and how it's set in their room and what safety measures they take and physical effects and all that. So, you can really, the whole idea of doing remote in the home with people. I mean, I've had to go into people's homes with camera crews just to watch them cook spaghetti, or wrap gifts or whatever it is all around the world, put on makeup and, it's this kind of stuff. You don't have the travel and you're not as intrusive anymore. So I think that we're getting a little bit more, although there are concerns, and I've written papers and given talks on concerns about self-branding. Okay, I'm going to share with you what I want you to know or think about me, not necessarily what I am.
Right.
A lot of that out there, and it's a Heisenberg principle or whatever you want to call it. People behave differently when they're observed, but I think they're at least more real than when I have a camera crew in their home.
That's true.
So,
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely.
those are some of it's changed.
Yeah, I mean, a lot has changed, I think, and I think it's a lot of it for the good too, and it's doing a lot. I mean, a lot of good things too, and I think there's a lot of exciting future coming through. And I'm really excited to what kind of technology. I don't know how they integrate VR with it, and like you mentioned, multiple cameras, and there's so many exciting things too. So I really can't wait to see where this takes the whole game.
It's the world's going to be in much more into big data than just sentiment data. Okay,
Right.
sentiment data, telling voice of customer, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Qualtrics has a plan for it. They kind of outlined it and claimed it, and that's XM, right? So experience management combines operational data, like what they call OData,
Right.
with X data, experiential data. And it could be employee experience, brand experience, whatever it is. So SAP, when they bought out, Qualtrics, they kind of defined that we are going to be in the bigger data world, okay? Because you take an SAP group and others who deal with operational data, right? And that operational data is much more intense than ever before, especially with our web interactions. Linger time, how long were you there? Did you like it? Did you click it? Blah, blah, blah. All those big data things that are happening in social media. I don't know if you've seen the movie, Social, whatever. There's one out there now talks about big data and how you can influence people. To me, that's probably the most significant thing that's happened to research industry in a long time. Because in the past, research was always sort of an ivory tower thing. It was not kept in the marketing area so much. It was used by that, but the key thing was to protect the identity of the people we were talking to. Okay. And that was always a trust issue that researchers have fought hard to maintain as far as our ability to communicate and recruit people to do legitimate research studies.
Right.
I'm not saying it's illegitimate, but I'm saying I have observed just the melting away of that rule. There still are privacy issues all around the world, especially Europe, Canada, blah, 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 right? But in the U.S., your identity is a commodity, right? So you sign up for it. I don't know how it is in India, but it's a commodity.
Right.
So what happens is when you have that kind of engagement with people on a big data basis and you understand every move they do, you can create and influence them to do things and think things that research has never done before. And research tags and targets individuals based on their behaviors online and wherever.
Right.
Research never did that. I mean, it was always an aggregate, anonymous large group. Now it's very much one-to-one because big data allows that. And so do AI tools and analytics and chatbots, People have conversations all the time with someone. It's not really someone.
Right.
And they've improved that stuff. And I've watched everything from, voice response, on the phone to, add one, plus one, all that, all the way up to where we are now, where it's, highly intelligent and,
Mhm.
voice technology as well as, chat. So
Right.
those kinds of things, the one-to-one, because of big data,
Mm.
is much stronger and will guide the future now. And it actually changes behavior of people as demonstrated on the movie Social Dilemma.
Right. Right, absolutely. Because I think the touch points, the data touch points for measurement have also increased a lot. And there's so much data that you can actually study human psychology and maybe influence it too, to a greater extent now. So that's
Yeah,
kind of scary.
it's a challenge. I mean, and then, here's the thing. Research has always been about data gathering and analytics. When I do a study, I'm designing how I'm going to go get the research, where I'm going to get the data, and how I'm going to do the analytics. I design for analytics.
Right.
With latent class, abilities with big data to sort of see what it is without our superimposed framework and filter
Mm.
is fascinating. And that's where AI is kind of living right now.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Well, let's now that you mentioned chatbots and conversational agents, uh, well, at the same time, it's doing a lot of good, right? And AI powered chatbots, like when they connect with customers, they're not only delivering a personalized experience, as you mentioned, but they're also kind of in a way making micro calculations to understand the customer too, right? So do you think they can be used for market research tools, or maybe influence them, like you mentioned? So what are the different ways companies can actually leverage this and kind of create a better experience for the customer?
It's interesting. I would say that on a transactional kind of thing, like I'm online and I go there and the chat bot pops up. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's there to offer me help and assistance at that point. Whatever I ask for is a data point.
Sure.
Okay. Because that's going to guide the team at some point. If everyone's asking for similar things, you're going to move those things closer to the front page.
Yeah.
You would think, right?
Right.
Unless it's part of your plan to drag them down some funnel somewhere.
Hmm.
But the idea is that's a data point itself, just whatever they're asking for help.
Right.
Then you have a after the purchase thing. There's not a lot of chatbots used then. Just that's more like email messages. Hey, thank you for your purchase. Blah blah. Here, check out our catalog. Join our club. Blah blah. Whatever it is.
Hmm.
But I see some use for that kind of chatbot technology more in voice through things like Alexa and Siri in the future, where if you sign up for these things, it's a lot easier to just answer. Like, for instance, I got your list of questions and I'm like, I don't want to have Sarah write all that crap out. Let's just talk. Right.
Right.
It's the same thing, I think, with voice. You're going to get some off of chatbots anyhow, because that's a helpful thing, and you need to know what people are asking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it'll lead you to maybe change your design of access.
Right.
But in everyday living, if people are more and more engaged with their voice devices, like Alexa, or maybe your toaster, I don't know. Maybe ask your refrigerator. I'll ask you at some point. Hey, you know, uh, there's a new kind of milk out there you should try. It'd be interesting. That's where I see the future going, is more and more of the IoT
Right.
devices being, more human, if you will, through chatbot
Mm.
interacting, and whatever that interaction is, can either help you create things like shopping lists or make improvements to product lines, or how does that engagement go, right? And
Right.
it's real infancy right now. I don't know if chatbots are that intelligent, but I see that as an easier way to go than having to type things out.
Right, absolutely. And it's fantastic that you mentioned about technologies being more human centric. So one of these episodes, we had a expert say that they see a technology wherein you will be actually having conversations, and the refrigerator will be able to tell you that, hey, you got so much balance in your account. I don't think you can afford milk. So stuff like that, right? So I mean, I can see a real life Jarvis coming into picture. Maybe if, Iron Man fans can be delighted about it. So
Yeah,
you know, right?
that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Fun stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, this has been a fantastic conversation, Mark. So many fresh insights, amazing conversation. So, before we close out, are there any thoughts that you'd like to leave our audience with?
You know, I've been in a position, a great time in history, to watch the research business go from paper to, we used to get mailbox, tons. I mean, a whole truck of mail every day.
Oh
Go
boy.
from paper to, with manual data entry, to really understanding how to use the tools that are advancing technology. And for the advice I would give to someone young in the field coming in is understand how to interpret this stuff so you can then glean the insights that are actionable. Understand what kind of knowledge and or information, beyond knowledge, just behavioral stuff, is going to affect a company's success. And keep an eye towards the new uses of things all the time. I think it's always important to experiment with different kinds of formats and programs, and don't just rely on doing things the way they've always been done. A lot of times we as an industry and research get dragged into this idea of how do we do this year compared to last year? And so you do
Right.
tracker studies and you do year to year comparisons and this kind of stuff. And what happened between this year and last year? Well, good luck with that right now. Gosh, we didn't do as well this year as last year. Well, no kidding. There's a freaking pandemic going on. Where
Yeah.
do we go from here?
Right. Absolutely.
So
Yep.
think
Well,
about the future and reinvent. There's no reason that we have to do things the way they've always been done.
absolutely. I think it's time. I mean, the year definitely has shown us that, and you can't really be stuck here and can't be. You got to think like 3 years for as ahead, and especially with the pandemic, you got to be like thinking more and about possibilities that could happen and be ready for it no matter what. And thank you so much, Mark, for your amazing interview, your time, and giving us your time. Your insights were amazing, and I know our audience are really going to enjoy this interview.
Hey, and by the way, we do our show. We're starting in October. It's every Wednesday at 1:30 Eastern U.S. time, and we're combining. It's a video program, webinar. We're combining webinars and things like fireside chats with networking opportunities. So it's free to attend. We hope that we get people around the world to come in every Wednesday, 1:30 Eastern time, cxtalks.org.
Fantastic. So all the audiences, make sure you go check out the Mark show, and all the details to Mark show will be available in the show notes. So we'll put all the details there. All the links to Mark's social will be available, so you can go and connect to him one-on-one and let him know that Engati CX sent you. So thank you so much. And before you close out, that there is a amazing webinar coming on Engati's side too, on the 3rd of October with the amazing Dennis Wakabayashi. We're going to talk about live chat, how to solve complex customer queries in real time. So make sure you're going to be there. It's going to be a fun webinar, a lot of jokes, they're not going to be corny. I promise you, it's going to be fantastic, fun times. So make sure you register for the same and be present for the same. And we'll be back with a new episode and a brand new expert soon. So stay tuned, and we'll see you around for the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.